Good evening, friends. Let's talk a little bit about the Final Fantasy VII Remake that just dropped. That's kind of doing the rounds. You see a lot of content creators making fluff pieces and very hastily put together reviews of the game. A lot of discussion on message boards right now about whether or not this game does live up to the almost incomprehensible hype generated over decades at this point. And being a millennial gamer who absolutely loved the original Final Fantasy VII and played it at release, I just want to share some thoughts here. Because this road to a Final Fantasy VII remake has been a long and weird one, frankly. Because I do remember that although the first trailer for this official remake dropped at E3 2015, the idea of remaking Final Fantasy VII has kind of been within the collective unconscious of the gaming industry for a long time. During the PS3 generation, Square Enix decided to release a tech demo, which was again this high-fidelity, fully 3D remake in-engine of that first bombing mission, the train sequence. And they unveiled this tech demo at E3 2005. So this is 10 years before they released the first trailer for the current remake that everyone's playing right now. So back in 2005, I saw this tech demo, and, of course it blew my mind. I immediately screamed out into the void, yes, Square Enix, take my money. Give this to me now. Little did I know that, of course, this is just one of those weird, irrational, kind of cruel and slightly manipulative decisions that modern Square Enix seems so fond of subjecting us to, because there was no remake. There was no remake in development. This was just a PR stunt to, I guess, gauge the demand. But ever since then, Final Fantasy fans, weebs, casual gamers who never got to play the original, the consensus has been, yes, we do want a Final Fantasy VII remake. Little did we know that it would take over 15 more years to eventually have the project in our hands. And now that we have it, I am apprehensive to jump in because there are some things that I just simply cannot abide by about this remake. And I'm going to tell you about them in an extremely autistic fashion. Number one is that this game is episodic. And I remember hearing, maybe a month after the 2015 E3 reveal of the official remake project, that they were saying, of course, how are we supposed to remake Final Fantasy VII? The game's 3 discs long. There's so many different locations. There's tons of story content. How would we ever remake that in one project? It has to be episodic. My first response to that is, wow, way to buzzkill my excitement for this game. Their specific reasoning for this episodic approach was that they would prefer to flesh out and remake every single detail to its absolute fullest than cut content to achieve a single release that fully encompassed the original story of Final Fantasy VII. So every single side character, every single subplot that you can imagine, it's all going in because that's how faithful this new team is to the original Final Fantasy VII. They respect the original game so much that it simply has to be episodic. So already, I just don't agree with this approach. I don't think it's really the right thing to do because it feels like they're gouging one of the most loyal fan bases in all of gaming. We want the closest thing possible to a faithful remake of Final Fantasy VII. So don't just take the first 12 hours and then sell that to us and call it Final Fantasy VII Remake. The idea that it has to be episodic because, of course, this is 2020. How could we possibly faithfully remake Final Fantasy VII in this gaming climate where the language of game design is completely different? The budgets are astronomical. It's just not an option. At least that's what they're telling us, but I refuse to believe that. I think that people would be absolutely blown away by a less fucking, weeby, anime-inspired Kingdom Hearts goof fest, where they were forced to license the Unreal Engine just so they could have that cutting-edge, pushing the boundaries, Final Fantasy visual aesthetic. Except that it used to be that Square was genuinely pushing the boundaries. They were actually operating at the cutting edge. Now, they have to license their technology from the West. I mean, this is sad. How about just don't do that? How about simplify the graphical style and actually give us a one-to-one remake? The whole game, all 3 discs, just remake it. Even use pre-rendered backgrounds if you have to. We have Tetsuya Nomura in charge of directing the Final Fantasy VII Remake project. And if you know anything about Tetsuya Nomura, you know he's one of the biggest hacks in Japanese gaming. And I can say that at the same time as absolutely loving the man's character designs. He's designed some of the best characters from the entire series, including 7. But does that qualify him as the man who should curate this all-time dream project that, you know, it's so huge at this point? How did Nomura end up being the guy who gets credited with all of the success of the original Final Fantasy VII? When in retrospect, you have to think that the influence of Hironobu Sakaguchi must have played a huge part in the success of the original Final Fantasies, the old school ones, because the minute that man got fucking forced to resign, the quality of the Final Fantasy games just plummeted almost instantaneously. It's sad. It's sad. Although I do think 12 was a good game, it certainly did not have that magic, that golden run of 6, 7, 8, 9, and even 10, arguably, although I did love 10 as well. Without having Sakaguchi in that producer role where he could oversee the projects and really help deliver a cohesive release, now all we have are these egomaniacs like Nomura, who are basically just free to masturbate over the legacy of the series, and they are taking credit for work that was not their own, especially Nomura too, because I mean, the man carries himself like he believes his own hype. He genuinely thinks that Final Fantasy VII is his baby, when the reality is it was a collaborative effort, and it was Square at their peak in terms of creativity. And then, you know, he just dances on a string to the corporate bosses, which are trying to milk as much revenue out of the Final Fantasy brand as possible. Be it licensing the characters for stupid fucking mobile games, producing these lame extended universe, it's the compilation of Final Fantasy VII projects, which, bar none, are all awful, and all they do is just piss on the original genius of Final Fantasy VII. Advent Children is a completely garbage movie, total Nomura vanity project. And that is my problem with modern Square Enix. It's that they have forgotten why Final Fantasy VII, or any of those classic games, were popular to begin with. There was something really special about those games. It was a sense of genuine artistry. There was a minimalism to it. The way the music played such a huge part of the game. There wasn't this cringe, weeb, pandering fan service that is just permeated a lot of the modern Square Enix projects. This sickly, saccharine, nonsensical, Nomurian autism that just completely, it ruins that sense of soul, that soulfulness that the Sakaguchi era games just absolutely oozed. And part of me was really hoping that this remake project would recapture the essence of the old school Final Fantasy games and finally redeem this series in the eyes of the diehard fans. And even up until maybe a week before release, I was absolutely on board to at least play this game and give it my best shot. I was even thinking, you know, maybe I'll watch my girlfriend play it. She's never played Final Fantasy VII. It would be great to watch her react to this story that moved me to such a huge degree when I was a kid, along with, you know, an entire generation of gamers. This shit is important to us. Now bear with me, I'm going to spoil a detail about the game, and I haven't even played it yet, so if you don't want to hear it, stop the video now, okay? But I was completely ready to at least try and enjoy this game from a fan service point of view, from a nostalgia point of view, and then I became aware that Nomura, in his eternal retardation, he decides that the Final Fantasy VII original story isn't good enough. It's not worth recreating the narrative one-to-one. See, I could understand if, due to a lease of life, you know, a fresh coat of paint, we'll change the graphics and update them, we'll tweak the character designs, that's completely reasonable. You know, it will even change the gameplay, update the gameplay for a more modern audience. Not really a huge fan of that because the turn-based system was fucking good, but you know what? I'm willing to even accept a remake that completely changes the gameplay. That's fine. But no, Nomura insists on tweaking the story. The original story that is considered one of the greatest video game plots of all time. According to Nomura, it's just not quite good enough. We need to tweak it. So you know what he's going to do? He's going to add a bunch of completely new characters, new events, and of course my favorite detail, the time Jannies. Now if you haven't heard about the time Jannies, frankly I envy you, because ever since I learnt about this one specific detail of the remake, it has reduced my excitement level to below zero, because I'm aware of Tetsuya Nomura's tendency to, he's a terrible writer. I mean, look at Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is like an experiment in autism. The entire concept of Kingdom Hearts is completely fucking insane, but I guess that's why people like it. Now, it's not really my jam, but I can see how Nomura's style of writing and his, pulling plot points out of his ass, terrible dialogue, aimless, meandering story, stakes constantly being raised and then changed, nonsense, right? That is Nomura's wheelhouse, and I can respect Kingdom Hearts fans for enjoying the absurdism of a Disney Final Fantasy crossover universe with a dash of emo, sprinkled in for good measure. Totally fine, knock yourself out. But we don't want that for Final Fantasy VII. We never wanted that for Final Fantasy VII. We didn't ask for those bullshit spin-off movies, Advent Children bullshit, Nomura bullshit, but we got it anyway. Okay? And old school fans like me, we've just considered it non-canon, okay? Because the original really was something special. And here we are again, it's the remake, everyone's fucking getting ready to play it, and I have to accept that he's introduced time travel ghosts into the plot, because this isn't just a remake. This game actually takes place in an alternate universe to the original Final Fantasy VII, and Sephiroth from Advent Children, as in the future Sephiroth, has found a way to transfer his consciousness back in time and influence events from the original plot. Congruent to this absolute madness, the Earth itself, Gaia herself, is projecting these weird-looking ghost entities. They look kind of like the Dementors from Harry Potter, that are supposed to stop the characters from doing anything that wasn't part of the original. But then they inexplicably do occasionally do something that wasn't part of the original narrative, and these ghosts come in and stop them. Did anybody ask for this? Who at Square Enix thought, you know what? We're poised to release probably one of the biggest games in our company's history. There's so much at stake here. The reputation of our very company itself and the Final Fantasy brand is at stake. We have millions of fans all over the world who would be absolutely thrilled with a one-to-one basic retelling of the Final Fantasy VII story. No anime bullshit, no Nomura Kingdom Hearts bullshit, just straight up. That would literally be all it would take to turn this into a phenomenal success. And yet, here we are again. I have that bitter taste in my mouth. I don't even want to buy this fucking game. I'm so sick of being disappointed by modern Square Enix. I've fucking had it. I've actually fucking had it. Now, I think the last burn for me was Final Fantasy 15, which could have been good, but ultimately was just another absolute ham fest of bullshit. And no offense to the people that really like those games, knock yourself out, but I'm an old ass fucking millennial, and I just want old school Final Fantasy, and I'm never ever gonna get it. And I'm fine with that. I'm actually comfortable with that, because, we always have those old games. We can always go back and play them. Except now, it's tainted. We were so close to getting something like the Resident Evil remake. A faithful, respectful remake of a classic game that truly did embody the spirit of the original, and it allowed new gamers who'd never played the original to experience the same thing, basically, the same vibe, the same atmosphere, but better, but more modern. That's really the only reason that a remake should even exist in the first place, because if it doesn't do that, then it disrespects the original. Look at Shadow of the Colossus, that remake for the PS4, right? That is incredibly respectful of the original game. It takes the visuals, it takes the graphics, and it breathes new life into it. It updates it, but it's still the same game, okay? Otherwise, don't call it remake. And this is the most fucking insidious part of this. We have an episodic game, which represents the first 12 hours of the original, Completely changed in a lot of ways. Now, the visuals are on point, I guess. I mean, I still think Cloud looks way too feminine in this remake. When the original character portrait, he had this sharper look about him. He looked a little bit more cold mercenary, whereas now he's this, like, gacked-looking fucking J-pop pretty boy. The point is, this is not a Final Fantasy VII remake, guys. This is a reimagining, this is a reboot, but this is not a remake. It feels almost like Nomura took a page out of Rian Johnson's book with the whole Last Jedi fiasco, where this is like a subversion of expectations, where, you know, all of the fans are expecting the Final Fantasy VII story, retold with better graphics and better gameplay. That's all we ever fucking wanted in the first place, I guess. But no, our expectations have been subverted, and this is actually a remake of the entire timeline. That's the twist to the title. This is a remake of the narrative of Final Fantasy VII. It's all gonna change. The fact is, Zack, who died in the original game, is alive in this remake. Once you get to the end, and it's already been spoiled for me, he's alive, okay? Now, fuck that shit. The death of Zack was an incredibly important part of Cloud's backstory. It's huge. Like, Zack surviving, it ruins Cloud's character, frankly. And I'm actually blown away at the sheer arrogance of Nomura, thinking that he can just willy-nilly change these incredibly important details from a game story that he didn't even write. That's the thing. We really don't need to see Advent Children characters reappearing in this remake. They weren't in the original. They're not canon. And this is the thing, really. It's that Final Fantasy VII, the brand, it's been commodified. It's not a standalone narrative anymore. It's this big, bloated universe, most of which has been created by a hack, closet homosexual, with delusions of grandeur, clearly. And I don't know how many people are aware of what they're actually getting into when they buy this game. I think, you know, maybe if you were as much of a fan of the original as I was, perhaps wait for this game to go on sale at least, because you're about to get cucked by a company completely out of touch with what made them great in the first place. We can't have nice things anymore, I guess, so fuck this clown world. I'm gonna fucking kill myself. There's a guy I saw, it was a screenshot of a forum, where he was actually saying he's gonna need therapy after finding out about this Time Janny fiasco. Time Jannies, ladies and gentlemen, that's time janitors.